Napoleon Bonaparte was born in 1769 on the island of Corsica, a land just absorbed into France. This detail shaped his identity. He was neither fully Corsican nor fully French. He existed in between, an outsider from the beginning. His family, minor nobility, lacked wealth and influence in mainland France. When Napoleon was sent to military school in Brienne, this gap became visible. His accent marked him. His manners set him apart. His poverty isolated him. While others formed friendships, Napoleon withdrew inward. Isolation did not weaken him, it refined him. He read obsessively histories of Rome, great commanders, the rise and fall of empires. These figures became frameworks, proof that individuals could reshape the world. From these readings, Napoleon developed a worldview built on three principles. First, that power is not inherited, it is seized. Second, that speed and decisiveness can overcome structural disadvantage. Third, that history remembers those who act, not those who hesitate. At Brienne, he was not yet a leader. He was quiet, solitary, and emotionally distant. But beneath that silence was a growing intensity. He observed others closely, studying not just tactics, but behavior. How authority worked, how influence formed, how fear and respect interacted. He learned early that belonging was not necessary, control was. His training in artillery further sharpened his thinking. Unlike traditional glory, artillery required calculation, angles, distances, timing, war as a system rather than chaos. This appealed to him. It aligned with his emerging belief that conflict could be engineered. By the time he graduated, Napoleon had not yet proven himself in battle, but internally, something had already solidified. He no longer saw himself as a participant. He saw himself as a force within history. Corsica had given him displacement. France had given him structure. Together, they produced a mind that did not seek acceptance, but opportunity. And soon, opportunity would arrive in the form of revolution. The French Revolution did not begin as a path for Napoleon. It began as a collapse. The monarchy fell. The aristocracy fractured. Institutions dissolved into instability. For many, this period was defined by fear, uncertainty, violence, unpredictability. But Napoleon saw something else. He saw acceleration. The old system limited advancement through birth. The new system, chaotic as it was, rewarded action. Rank could now be earned through performance rather than lineage. For a young officer with ambition, this was not a crisis. It was an opening. Napoleon aligned himself carefully with revolutionary forces, though not out of ideological devotion. His loyalty was pragmatic, directed toward whatever structure allowed movement upward. His defining moment came at the Siege of Toulon in 1793. Royalist forces, supported by the British, had taken control of the port. The situation was critical. Napoleon, then a relatively unknown artillery officer, proposed a bold strategy. Instead of attacking the city directly, target the high ground, controlling the harbor, control the artillery positions, and the enemy fleet would be forced to withdraw. It worked. The British evacuated. Toulon fell. Napoleon was promoted. But more important than the promotion was the realization that followed. He had not simply followed orders, he had redefined the battlefield. From this point forward, Napoleon approached war differently. He did not see it as a series of engagements. He saw it as a system of leverage. Position, timing, and psychological pressure could collapse larger forces. The revolution continued to spiral executions, purges, shifting factions. But Napoleon navigated this instability with precision. He avoided deep entanglement in ideological conflicts while maintaining visibility through military success. He understood something fundamental. In unstable systems, survival depends on adaptability. Dominance depends on speed. By the mid-1790s, Napoleon was no longer just an officer. He was a rising force, recognized for competence, feared for decisiveness, and increasingly aware of his own trajectory. The revolution had not created him, it had revealed him. And now, with opportunity expanding, he would move beyond survival into command. When Napoleon was given command of the Army of Italy in 1796, it was not considered a prestigious assignment. The army was poorly supplied, underpaid, and demoralized. It had little expectation of success. In many ways, it reflected Napoleon's own early position, underestimated and overlooked. He immediately changed its psychology. Instead of focusing on hardship, he reframed the campaign as opportunity. He promised his soldiers wealth, glory, and purpose. His speeches were not merely motivational, they were strategic. He understood that belief could alter performance before a single battle was fought. Then he moved. Napoleon's Italian campaign introduced a new operational logic. Traditional armies moved slowly, relying on supply lines and rigid formations. Napoleon prioritized speed, fragmentation, and concentration of force at decisive points. He divided enemy armies, attacked them separately, and prevented coordination. At the Battle of Lodi, this approach became legend. Facing Austrian forces positioned across a bridge, Napoleon ordered a direct assault. It was risky, even reckless, but he understood something deeper. Victory here would not just defeat the enemy, would construct identity. He personally advanced with his troops. The image mattered. From that moment, Napoleon was no longer just a general. He became a symbol of courage, inevitability, and momentum. His soldiers began to see him as a figure touched by destiny. This shift was critical. Military success alone creates outcomes. Myth creates loyalty. Throughout the campaign, Napoleon continued to exploit both. He issued bulletins exaggerating victories, shaping public perception in France. Each success reinforced his reputation, not just as a commander, but as a phenomenon. At the same time, he negotiated, reorganized territories, and extracted resources. War, for Napoleon, was not only about defeating armies, it was about restructuring political space. By the end of the campaign, Austria was forced to negotiate. The Army of Italy, once dismissed, had become one of the most effective forces in Europe. More importantly, Napoleon had proven something to himself. He could take weak systems and transform them into instruments of power. This realization would follow him for the rest of his life, because once a man believes he can shape reality through will and speed, he begins to test how far that belief can go. After his success in Italy, Napoleon sought a new stage one, large enough to expand his influence beyond Europe. Egypt offered that possibility. Officially, the campaign aimed to disrupt British trade routes to India. Unofficially, it was something more, a projection of ambition into history itself. Napoleon did not go to Egypt alone. He brought scientists, engineers, artists, and scholars. This was not just a military expedition, it was an intellectual one. He intended not only to conquer, but to document, to study, to imprint. At the Battle of the Pyramids, he defeated the Mamluk forces decisively. His square formations neutralized cavalry, demonstrating once again his ability to adapt tactics to context. But beneath the victory, a structural flaw emerged. The British Navy, under Admiral Nelson, destroyed the French fleet at the Battle of the Nile. Napoleon's army was stranded. Strategically, the campaign was compromised. Yet Napoleon did something remarkable. He reframed failure as narrative. He emphasized scientific discoveries, cultural engagement, and the grandeur of the mission. The discovery of the Rosetta Stone became symbolic not of military success, but of intellectual conquest. This marked a turning point in Napoleon's evolution. He began to operate on two levels simultaneously: reality and perception. What actually happened and what people believed happened. And increasingly, he prioritized the second. Eventually, recognizing that his position in Egypt could not produce decisive strategic gains, Napoleon made a controversial decision. He left his army behind and returned to France. From a traditional perspective, this could be seen as abandonment. From Napoleon's perspective, it was calculation. France was unstable again. Opportunity had reappeared. He chose power over loyalty, future over present. Egypt revealed both his brilliance and his limits. He could win battles, he could shape perception, but he could not yet control systems beyond immediate reach. Still, he had learned something essential. History is not only written by outcomes, it is shaped by those who control the story. And Napoleon was becoming very good at telling his. Upon Napoleon's return from Egypt, France was unstable. The Directory, meant to stabilize the revolution, was ineffective, corrupt, and divided. Political legitimacy was eroding, military dependence rising. Napoleon understood this environment immediately. Power requires timing, coordination, and the appearance of inevitability, not necessarily majority support. The coup of 18 Brumaire in 1799 was engineered. Napoleon aligned with key political figures seeking stability. He provided force, decisiveness, and public credibility. The execution of the coup revealed his method. He used confusion as cover. Legislative councils were pressured, relocated, and destabilized. Military presence reinforced political intent. Resistance was neutralized quickly through control of space and momentum. Within days, the Directory collapsed. Napoleon emerged as first consul. Officially, France remained a republic. Structurally, it had already transformed. Napoleon moved quickly to consolidate authority. He did not dismantle the state. He reorganized it. Key reforms followed: centralized administration under loyal officials and the Bank of France. Education reforms produced disciplined civil servants, and the Napoleonic Code standardized law. These reforms were functional, not ideological. Napoleon's goal was to create a system that worked, and he controlled. He presented himself as a stabilizer, a protector of the revolution's achievements. But in reality, he was replacing a decentralized political experiment with a centralized structure built around his authority. He did not seize power loudly. He absorbed it. France was exhausted, tired of chaos, violence, and uncertainty. The shift was accepted, even welcomed. Napoleon understood a fundamental truth. People will trade freedom for stability if instability becomes unbearable. By 1800, he was no longer just a general. He was the axis around which France revolved. And once power is consolidated successfully, the next question is inevitable. How far can it expand? In 1804, Napoleon made a decision that clarified everything. He crowned himself emperor. The symbolism was precise. Instead of allowing the Pope to place the crown upon his head, Napoleon took it himself and completed the act. Authority did not descend from divine approval, it originated from him. This moment marked the end of the Revolution's political ambiguity. France was now an empire. Yet Napoleon maintained a careful narrative. He did not present himself as a return to monarchy, but as its evolution, a merit-based ruler who preserved the revolution's structural gains while eliminating its instability. This duality defined his rule. On one hand, he introduced reforms that modernized France, legal equality for men under the Napoleonic Code, administrative efficiency through centralized governance, merit-based advancement in military and civil institutions. On the other hand, he constructed a system dependent on personal loyalty. Titles, honors, and positions were distributed strategically to reinforce allegiance. He built an elite, but one that owed its existence to him. This is where a subtle transformation occurred. Earlier, Napoleon had operated within systems. Now, he began to equate himself with the system. His decisions were no longer constrained by external structures. Instead, structures adapted to his will. Success reinforced this shift. France became more stable. Institutions functioned. The economy improved. Military victories continued. Each positive outcome strengthened the belief, both in himself and in others, that his authority was not only justified, but necessary. But there was an inherent risk. When power becomes personalized, feedback weakens, opposition diminishes, correction disappears. Napoleon was still brilliant, still disciplined, still strategic, but he was no longer limited. And limitation, though often perceived as weakness, is what prevents overreach. By crowning himself emperor, Napoleon did more than claim authority. He removed the last boundary between ambition and execution. What followed would not be a rise, it would be an expansion. The Battle of Austerlitz in 1805 is often described as Napoleon's greatest victory. But its significance goes beyond military success. It represents the moment when his method, speed, deception, and psychological control reached its most refined form. Facing a larger coalition force composed of Russian and Austrian armies, Napoleon did not attempt to match strength with strength. He manipulated perception. He deliberately weakened his right flank, creating the illusion of vulnerability. The Allied forces, confident in their advantage, adjusted their strategy to exploit what they believed was a weakness. It was a trap. As they repositioned, their center became exposed. Napoleon struck precisely where coordination had broken down. His forces advanced rapidly, splitting the enemy army and collapsing its structure. Execution was flawless. Timing, positioning, and deception aligned perfectly. The battlefield became not a contest of strength, but a demonstration of control. The result was decisive. The coalition was shattered. Austria was forced into peace. Napoleon's dominance over continental Europe appeared uncontested, but the deeper impact was psychological. Austerlitz confirmed Napoleon's internal belief. He was not simply skilled, he was exceptional, perhaps even unstoppable. This belief would shape his future decisions. Confidence, when grounded in reality, enhances performance. But when reinforced repeatedly, without meaningful challenge, it evolves into overconfidence. After Austerlitz, Napoleon no longer questioned whether he could win. He began to assume that he would. This shift is subtle but critical, because from this point onward, errors would not come from lack of ability. They would come from excess belief. Austerlitz was perfection, and perfection in strategy often carries a hidden cost. It removes doubt. Unable to defeat Britain through direct military confrontation at sea, Napoleon turned to economic warfare. The Continental System was designed to isolate Britain by prohibiting European nations from trading with it. On paper, the strategy was logical. Britain depended heavily on trade. Cut off its markets, and its power would weaken. But this strategy assumed something critical, that economic systems could be controlled as precisely as armies. They could not. Europe itself relied on British goods, merchants, local economies, and entire regions were interconnected through trade networks that extended beyond political borders. Enforcing the blockade required constant surveillance, cooperation, and compliance across diverse territories. Compliance did not come. Smuggling increased. Black markets emerged. Allies resisted enforcement. Even French-controlled regions found ways to bypass restrictions. Napoleon responded by tightening control, but each attempt to enforce the system created more resistance. Instead of weakening Britain decisively, the Continental System began to strain Napoleon's own empire. This revealed a limitation in his model of control. On the battlefield, variables are constrained. Movement, terrain, and command structures can be influenced directly, but economies are adaptive. People respond to pressure with innovation. Systems evolve under constraint. Napoleon's strength, his ability to impose order, rapidly became a weakness when applied to complex, decentralized networks. He was trying to control something that could not be commanded in the same way as an army. This marked a turning point. For the first time, his strategy did not produce clear, immediate success. Instead, it generated slow, accumulating problems, difficult to measure, harder to correct. Yet he persisted, because by this stage, retreat was no longer a natural option. His empire depended on expansion and enforcement. Stopping meant weakening. Adjusting meant admitting limitation. And Napoleon had begun to believe that limitation did not apply to him. Napoleon had defeated great powers. He had reorganized Europe. He had reshaped systems. But in Spain, he encountered something he could not easily calculate: resistance. In 1808, Napoleon intervened in Spanish politics and placed his brother, Joseph Bonaparte, on the throne. From a structural perspective, it made sense. Control Spain, and you reinforce the Continental System. Extend influence, secure the western flank. But the decision ignored a critical factor: legitimacy. The Spanish people did not accept Joseph as their king. What followed was not a conventional war. It was something far more destabilizing: guerrilla warfare. Small groups attacked supply lines, isolated units, and communication routes. There was no single battlefield, no decisive engagement, no clear victory condition. The war spread into towns, villages, mountains. It became constant. French forces, trained for structured combat, struggled to adapt. Victory in one region meant little. Control could not be sustained. Every success dissolved into renewed resistance. At the same time, Britain entered the conflict, supporting Spanish forces and opening another front against Napoleon. Spain became a drain, not immediately catastrophic, but persistent. It consumed resources, attention, and manpower. It forced Napoleon into a prolonged conflict that offered no clear resolution. More importantly, it revealed a fundamental limitation. Power imposed from above cannot replace acceptance from below. Napoleon could install rulers, he could defeat armies, but he could not force a population to believe in his system. The Peninsular War became known as the Spanish ulcer, a wound that did not heal, slowly weakening the body of his empire. For the first time, Napoleon faced a form of conflict that could not be solved through speed, precision, or decisive battle. And he underestimated its impact, because while he remained focused on larger strategic ambitions, Spain was quietly eroding the foundation beneath him. In 1812, Napoleon launched his most ambitious campaign, Russia. The objective was clear: force compliance with the Continental System, reassert dominance, and eliminate resistance. He assembled a massive army, over 600,000 men from across his empire. It was the largest force he had ever commanded. On paper, it represented overwhelming strength. But scale introduced new risks. The Russian strategy avoided direct confrontation. Instead of engaging in decisive battle, they retreated deeper into their territory, destroying supplies as they moved. Villages were burned, fields were emptied, resources disappeared. Napoleon advanced but gained nothing. When he finally reached Moscow, he expected negotiation. Instead, he found the city abandoned and, soon, burning. There was no victory to secure. Then came winter. The retreat from Moscow was not a battle, it was a collapse. Cold, starvation, disease became the real enemies. Supply lines failed. Organization broke down. Morale disintegrated. The army that had entered Russia as a symbol of power left it as a shadow of itself. Only a fraction survived. This campaign marked a fundamental shift. Napoleon's system based on speed, momentum, and control failed. It failed against distance, climate, and strategic withdrawal. For the first time, he was not outmaneuvered by an enemy general. He was outmatched by reality itself. Russia did not just defeat Napoleon's army, it shattered the perception of his invincibility. And once that perception was broken, everything that depended on it began to weaken. After Russia, the balance shifted rapidly. European powers, once cautious, now saw opportunity. Coalitions formed again. Napoleon, weakened but still capable, fought to maintain control, but the momentum had changed. In 1814, he was forced to abdicate. He was exiled to the island of Elba. For most rulers, this would have been the end. For Napoleon, it was a pause. In 1815, he escaped. What followed became one of the most remarkable episodes in history: the 100 Days. Napoleon returned to France, and as he advanced, troops sent to stop him instead joined him. Authority, it seemed, could be rebuilt through presence alone. He regained power without a major battle. But the situation had changed irreversibly. Europe responded immediately. This time, there would be no hesitation. The coalition moved quickly to confront him before he could stabilize his position. The final confrontation came at Waterloo. The battle did not reflect Napoleon at his peak. Timing issues, environmental conditions, and coordination failures disrupted his strategy. His forces were strong but no longer dominant. The enemy held, and when reinforcements arrived against him, the outcome became unavoidable. Napoleon was defeated. This time, there would be no return. Waterloo was not just a military loss, it was the end of possibility. After Waterloo, Napoleon was exiled again, this time to St. Helena, a remote island in the Atlantic. There would be no escape. Removed from power, army, and influence, Napoleon entered the final phase of his life. But even here, he remained active in a different way. He began to shape his legacy. Through conversations, dictated memoirs, and reflections, he reconstructed his story. He presented himself as a defender of the revolution, a modernizer, a misunderstood figure constrained by circumstance. This was not accidental. Napoleon understood something fundamental. Power can be lost. Narrative can endure. On St. Helena, he no longer controlled events, but he influenced how they would be remembered. He reframed defeats, justified decisions, and elevated his role within history. Over time, this narrative would spread, shaping how future generations understood him. He died in 1821, alone, removed from the empire he had built, yet not forgotten. Napoleon Bonaparte did not simply rise and fall. He revealed a pattern, a structure that repeats across history whenever ambition meets opportunity and success removes restraint. He began as an outsider, a young officer shaped by isolation, sharpened by discipline, and driven by a need not to belong, but to dominate. In a collapsing system, he found clarity. Where others saw chaos, he saw movement. Where others hesitated, he acted. And action, repeated with precision, became power. What made Napoleon extraordinary was not just his ability to win battles. It was his ability to compress time. He moved faster than institutions could respond, faster than enemies could coordinate, faster than systems could adapt. In doing so, he created a new model of control based not on stability, but on momentum. But momentum has a cost. It must be sustained. And the larger the system becomes, the more energy it requires to maintain that motion. Napoleon expanded continuously, militarily, politically, psychologically. Each victory reinforced the belief that expansion was not only possible, but necessary. Stopping would mean weakening. Slowing would mean vulnerability. So he did not stop. And in that decision lies the core of his story. Because control, at scale, is never absolute. It is conditional. It depends on variables that cannot all be predicted: human resistance, geography, climate, time itself. Napoleon mastered many of these variables, but he could not eliminate them. Spain showed him that people do not submit indefinitely. Russia showed him that nature does not negotiate. Europe united showed him that fear can turn into coordination. By the time these forces converged, the system he had built was too large to correct and too rigid to adapt. His fall was not sudden, it was structural, and yet Napoleon did not disappear. In exile, stripped of power, he turned to something else: narrative. He understood that while empires collapse, stories persist, that memory shaped carefully can outlive reality, that a man can lose everything and still influence how he is seen. Today, Napoleon exists in two forms: the man who rose, ruled, and fell, and the myth which continues to expand. A genius, a tyrant, a reformer, a conqueror, all are true. None are complete. Because Napoleon's real legacy is not found in the borders he redrew or the battles he won. It is found in the question he leaves behind. How much of the world can one person truly control before control becomes illusion? And perhaps more importantly, at what point does greatness begin to contain the seeds of its own end? History does not answer these questions directly, but it repeats them again and again.